Hello, everyone. Dr. Eames here. This time I'd like to talk about prejudice. Uh, Last time I talked about stereotyping as a way of thinking, and it's mainly a normal brain function of storage of information and data and retrieval, except for when we form our categories of information about people. These are where the worst stereotypes are held. And stereotypical thinking about people sets the stage for prejudice. So what prejudice is a way of feeling. It's about our values. Stereotypical thinking about any group of people tends to view those people as deficient in some way, and it means that everyone associated in that group that you put into that group, which is all the people who meet the criteria of that group, have something wrong with them, and it's applied across the board. There's no individuality. And so, from that point of view, people may be lazy, they may be unintelligent, they may be troublesome, they may be dirty, they may be criminal, they may be unhealthy. And you could go on and on with all the negative behaviors that people associate with other people. But these sorts of feelings develop from the stereotypical thinking that we might have been doing. And it grows over time into a way of feeling, and they become beliefs. Um, and so this way of feeling morphs into a personal belief or value. Um, and the way of feeling becomes a prejudgment on everyone in that category of people. So it definitely denies individuality. And psychologists tell us that usually this way of thinking and feeling about people relates to something that might be deeply hidden from our own selves, that it might be something that's unconscious and even hidden from our own awareness. We don't realize that we harbor these deep-seated feelings of prejudice towards other groups until something brings it out. And unfortunately, when we categorize people and create our stereotypical categories in our mind, so we can retrieve information about people just as easily as we do about events and situations and things, um, the it's different somehow with our categorization of labels for people. We don't update that information. We don't renew it. If we see something that disproves some of the information in it, we tend to disregard it, and so forth. So we have some problems there when it comes to this way of thinking, and it's very difficult to dispel it and to fight it. Um, so some prejudice is simply a reflection of a widespread belief that might be prevalent in any given culture. If, for instance, you live in a culture where women are deemed to be inferior, and that there ought to be very specific gender roles for men and for women, you might feel that way yourself because in your particular universe, it's normal way to act and believe. Um, but prejudicial feelings for some individuals provide a more irrational belief in their own superiority over specific groups of people. And they do this for a variety of self-serving ego reasons. Um, for some individuals, this prejudicial thinking provides the basis for scapegoating in their own lives. They can scapegoat that specific group of people and blame them for your own deficiencies or your own problems or failures or whatever it might be. So that's linked very much to the notion of feeling superior. And feeling superior is a very powerful emotion. It can easily lead to scapegoating and even more irrational thinking. Sometimes, when confronted, individuals who hold deep seated prejudicial feelings and ways of thinking, they cannot rationally explain it, and they can't usually debate very well why they feel that way. This is partly because it may be somewhat unconscious, but in those cases where it's right out in the open, it's not unconscious, they'll tend to provide an example of some kind of why their stereotype is true. And you'll hear stories, and they're usually pretty weak and they're full of flaws. And yet, most people will just outright use these as proof and evidence, or just outright deny they're prejudiced. Because if they were to acknowledge their prejudice, their way of thinking, as really, yes, it's in me, then they are acknowledging that they are both irrational and probably unethical. Um, and so we all know, I think, that we have to be a little bit careful from extremely prejudiced people. There can be some hostility from these people. There can even be varying degrees of violence. There certainly could be an awful lot of talk and bombast and so forth. People do this and reinforce it themselves in some sort of vicious cycle. They might be trying to impress someone. They might be trying to impress a member of an in group that they identify with or would like to be a part of. So sometimes the prejudice is subtle, but today it's all out in the open. It's very visible when you look at ethnic relations in our country that this has all come out into the open, and we're all trying to deal with it right now and understand it. Um, and this has shocked a lot of people who have never really encountered this in their lives and don't quite know how to deal with it. Okay, folks, that's all I want to talk about this time. I'll talk to you again soon.